AITA for cutting off dad and his kid. I'm 19 now, but I stopped speaking to my father, Henry, when I was 12. It wasn't an overnight decision. It built slowly, over years of disappointment, broken promises, and moments that left me feeling small, unseen, and unsafe. My grandparents, Margaret and Daniel, became my anchors. They raised me mostly because my father couldn't or wouldn't. They were steady, reliable, and loving, and I owe much of who I am to them. Henry had always struggled with alcohol. There were times, when I was very young, that I would wait for him at the bus stop after school, hoping he would come and walk me home. Sometimes he appeared, but other times he didn't show up at all. The few moments when he did come were chaotic. He drank, argued, or made promises he never kept. Birthdays, school events, even small milestones were often forgotten or ruined. I remember my 8th birthday, sitting on the couch, waiting for him. He never came. Later, I overheard a neighbor saying he had been drinking at a friend's house all afternoon. That memory is still vivid. The feeling of being invisible to someone who was supposed to care about me. That's what made me realize I had to protect myself. My grandparents tried to shield me from as much of his chaos as possible, but they couldn't erase the memories. I remember being 8 years old and being taken to Henry's friends' houses. Sometimes they were loud and frightening, with strangers I didn't know, and I was expected to sit quietly. Once, I had to help babysit a boy who had special needs, even though I was just a child myself. Looking back, it's terrifying. At the time, I didn't understand that I was being forced into situations no child should ever face. Henry's relationships were always complicated. Each partner seemed to bring a new storm. Some were aggressive, others manipulative, but the pattern never changed. Chaos, conflict, and children left behind. I have a younger half-brother, Liam, who lives with my grandparents because Henry could never care for him properly. I often saw Liam confused, asking questions about our father, about why he wasn't around. I tried to answer gently, but it was hard to explain someone so unreliable. The breaking point came when I was 12. My grandparents had organized a small birthday party for me. A few close friends and family came. My father said he would attend. I believed him. I wanted him to care, but he didn't show. Hours passed. I watched the empty street outside the window, hoping he would appear. Later, I learned from a neighbor that he had spent the day drinking at a friend's house, completely forgetting about me. That day, I realized he could never be someone I could rely on. I decided then and there that I could no longer let him into my life. Since then, I have been no contact. I blocked his numbers, ignored messages, and refused calls. I avoided places he might be. I lived quietly with my grandparents, who gave me stability and love. And yet, even with all that distance, he tried to pull me back in. Over the years, I received texts that were manipulative, emotional, and sometimes cruel. "You'll regret ignoring me," he'd say, or "Your brother deserves a father too." But I refused to respond. I knew his words were meant to make me feel guilty, to weaken the boundaries I had built. Recently, I found out through a cousin's Facebook post that Henry had a new child, a baby boy. My first reaction was shock, then a deep, familiar pang of unease. My grandparents began urging me, gently, to at least acknowledge the child. "He's your sibling," they said. "Maybe you should try." I shook my head. I couldn't. I had seen the patterns. I knew the kind of environment the baby would grow up in. The man Henry was with now, Alex, had a history of aggression. Henry himself hadn't changed. He still drank. He still prioritized his needs over anyone else. I couldn't risk exposing myself to that chaos again. Even Liam sometimes asked about the baby, and I had to find careful words. "Some people aren't ready to be good parents," I told him. "Some people make mistakes, and it's not safe for us to be around them." Explaining this to a child was painful. I saw the disappointment in his eyes, but I also knew I was protecting him. Protecting myself had always meant setting limits, and now it meant protecting him too. Sometimes, I imagine what it would be like if things were different. If Henry were the father I had wanted, if he were steady and kind. I imagine him holding his baby, smiling, being reliable. But then reality intrudes. I remember the empty birthdays, the nights spent worrying if he would appear, the times I was left in strange, unsafe homes. I remember the manipulation, the guilt, the chaos. The fantasy feels hollow. The reality is messy, painful, and unsafe. Margaret and Daniel sometimes feel guilty for raising me away from him. "Maybe one day you'll change your mind," they say softly. I understand their perspective, but I cannot go back. I am not cruel. I am cautious, protective, and aware of my limits. I have learned the hard way that survival sometimes requires making decisions that others don't understand. I have learned that some relationships are too toxic to mend, even when you wish they could be different. Now, with this new child in the picture, the tension grows. Family members occasionally ask if I'll meet him or at least send a message. I stay firm. My boundaries are clear, and I will not allow them to be crossed. I have worked too hard, endured too much, to be pulled into a life of repeated pain and manipulation. Protecting myself is not selfish. It is necessary. Late at night, I sometimes feel a strange mix of emotions. Sadness for what could have been, longing for a father I never had, and relief that I am free from the chaos that Henry represents. I miss the idea of a family that works, of a father who shows up and cares, but I know it is an idea, not reality. And so, I continue to live in the safe, steady world my grandparents created alongside Liam, holding on to the boundaries that protect us all.
Update.
I learned about Henry's new child. I received a text from him. It was brief but heavy. "I have a son now. Don't you want to see him?" My heart tightened. I didn't reply. For a moment, I stared at the screen, feeling a mixture of anger, fear, and a faint, uncomfortable flicker of curiosity. But I quickly pushed it aside. This wasn't about curiosity. It was about protecting myself. That evening, my grandparents noticed the tension on my face. Margaret gently asked, "Did he send something?" I nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. Daniel sighed and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to answer him," he said softly, but his eyes carried worry. "We just want you to be safe, but we also don't want to see you carry this alone." I appreciated their care, but I felt isolated. Even the people I loved sometimes struggled to understand why I had to stay distant. A few days later, Alex, Henry's partner, sent me a Facebook message. Unlike my father's texts, this one was long and insistent. He told me that I should accept family, that my baby brother deserves to know you, and that I was being stubborn and unfair. I could feel the manipulation in his words, the way they were meant to make me feel guilty for protecting myself. My hands shook as I read it. I knew that responding would only pull me into a storm I wasn't ready to face. I blocked him immediately. Even after blocking him, the tension didn't disappear. One afternoon, I heard my cousin, Emily, mention in passing that Henry had shown the baby at a local park, boasting on social media about how Big Brother should come and meet him. I felt my stomach twist. It didn't matter that I wasn't physically there. He was already using the baby as a tool to manipulate me. Every picture, every post, every casual mention was a subtle tug at my emotions, trying to erode the boundaries I had carefully built. The emotional strain became harder when Liam started asking questions. He had seen some of Henry's social media posts and wanted to know why I didn't respond. "Why doesn't he want to see the baby?" Liam asked one evening as we sat in the living room. I took a deep breath, struggling to find words that wouldn't scare him. "Sometimes people aren't ready to be good parents," I said gently. "Some people make mistakes, and it's not safe to be around them right now." Liam frowned, and I could see the confusion in his eyes. He didn't fully understand the chaos Henry brought into our lives, and I had to protect him from it while also trying to answer his questions honestly. A week later, Henry tried calling my grandparents' home. I refused to answer, but the voicemails were left on speaker for me to hear. His voice was pleading, almost desperate. "Please, just come see him. You're his brother. You don't understand what you're missing." Hearing his tone, I felt a mixture of sadness and anger. It was the same pattern, just like always: blame, guilt, and a twisted sense of obligation. I didn't respond. I refused to be manipulated again. Then, a new layer of pressure came from distant relatives. Some of them had seen Henry's social media posts and called Margaret and Daniel, asking why I wasn't reaching out. "He's still your father," they said, or "You're missing an opportunity to bond with family." I heard their words and felt frustration rise inside me. Everyone wanted me to comply with their expectations, but no one seemed to understand the history, the neglect, the years of chaos that had shaped my choice. The emotional weight of the situation began to take a toll. I spent nights staring at the ceiling, feeling the loneliness of my decision. I missed the idea of a family that could be whole, that could love without strings attached or manipulation. And yet, I reminded myself that this wasn't just about me. It was about protecting Liam, preserving the stability my grandparents had worked so hard to create, and honoring the boundaries I had fought for. Eventually, I decided to send a single text back to Henry, not to reconnect, but to set a firm boundary. I wrote, "I will not be involved with you or your child. Please do not contact me again." I hesitated before sending it, knowing it might provoke him, but I needed to assert my limits. Within minutes, the message was delivered, and a strange sense of relief washed over me. I hadn't opened the door to manipulation. I had closed it firmly and decisively. Even after sending the text, the emotional ripple continued. Liam asked questions again, and I had to repeat myself, reassuring him that we were safe, that some people couldn't be trusted to act responsibly, and that family wasn't always about blood. It was about care, love, and stability. That night, I felt exhausted but steady. I knew that by standing firm, I was protecting not only myself, but the life life my grandparents had created for us. Update 1 ended with a realization. Staying away from Henry wasn't just a personal choice anymore. It was about creating a safe space, about preserving the love and stability that we had, and about teaching Liam that sometimes protecting yourself from toxic people is the most important act of care you can give.
Update 2.
A month passed after the messages and voicemails from Henry and Alex. For the most part, life at home with my grandparents and Liam remained steady. But the peace was fragile, like a thin sheet of ice over deep water. One evening, I was sitting in the living room doing homework when my phone buzzed. It was a WhatsApp message from Henry. He hadn't tried to call this time, just a long, typed note that carried the weight of someone desperate to manipulate. "I know you're mad. I know you think I don't care, but you're wrong. Your brother deserves to know me and his new sibling. Don't you want to be part of our family? Don't you want to see your baby brother? You're making a mistake by shutting us out." I stared at the screen. My hands were clammy. My first instinct was to block him immediately, like I always did. But something in me hesitated. It wasn't curiosity. It was the tension of the situation, the pressure of every adult around me asking me to give him a chance. I didn't respond. Later that night, I was in the kitchen with Margaret trying to get a glass of water when she said softly, "He's trying, in his own way." I froze. "Mom, he's manipulative. He's never tried to be a parent before. You know that." Margaret sighed, her eyes gentle but sad. "I know. I worry. You're holding so much inside, and I don't want you to carry all this alone." Then, just as quietly, Liam asked a question that made my heart sink. "Do you think he really cares about the baby?" I didn't answer immediately. I took a deep breath. "I don't know, Liam. Sometimes people think they care, but their actions tell a different story. You have to judge by what someone actually does, not what they say." Liam nodded slowly, but I could see the uncertainty in his young eyes. A few days later, I received another Facebook message, this time from Alex. He wrote about how important family connections were and hinted that Henry had been talking about me constantly, saying I was missing out and that one day I'd regret it. I could feel the guilt trap forming, but I refused to engage. I blocked the message and tried to breathe through the tension that had settled in my chest. The real emotional escalation came when my extended family got involved. My aunt called my grandparents, asking why I hadn't reached out. "It's not too late," she said. "You could build a relationship with your brother and the baby. You're being stubborn." Daniel and Margaret were polite but firm in their responses. "He's 12 years old when this started. He needs stability. We're not going to force him." I overheard the conversation from the hallway and felt a mix of relief and frustration. Relief that my grandparents defended me, frustration that everyone else seemed to think I should sacrifice my boundaries for someone who had caused years of chaos. Then came a new layer of complexity. One afternoon, Liam mentioned that one of Henry's social media posts had a picture of the baby smiling, with a caption about hoping Big Brother comes soon. Liam asked, "Do you think he meant me to?" My chest tightened. I had to explain again, carefully. "Not you, Liam. He's just trying to guilt me. Sometimes adults do that. It doesn't mean he's right or that it's safe to go." Liam nodded, but I could tell he was processing it. He was young, innocent, and curious about family connections that had always been unsafe for him. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the messages, the guilt traps, the constant pressure. I remembered other times Henry had tried to manipulate me. When I was 10, he promised he would take me to an amusement park. I waited for hours. He never came. Another time, he promised to teach me how to ride a bike. He showed up drunk, arguing with my grandmother instead. These memories flooded back, reminding me why I couldn't go back now. By the following week, Henry escalated further. He sent a text with a photo of the baby asleep, holding a tiny toy, and wrote, "Look who's waiting for you. Don't you want to be a part of his life?" I felt my stomach twist. It was cruel, using a child as bait. I didn't reply. I blocked him. I knew he wanted an emotional response, and I refused to give him one. Margaret noticed my exhaustion and pulled me aside. "I know you're tired," she said softly, "and you're doing the right thing. You're protecting yourself and Liam. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for that." I nodded, but tears pricked my eyes. I wanted to feel safe, loved, and included in a family, but I knew this was impossible with Henry. The only love I could rely on was here, in this home, with people who had never let me down. Update 2 ended with a quiet realization. Henry's attempts to reach me were relentless, but I was stronger than I had ever been. Protecting myself wasn't just about avoiding pain. It was about establishing a safe, loving environment for both Liam and me. I understood, more than ever, that boundaries weren't walls to keep people out. They were shields to protect the ones I loved most.
Update 3.
2 months had passed since Henry's last messages, and life at home with my grandparents and Liam had settled into a fragile rhythm. But the calm was deceptive, like the silence before a storm. One late afternoon, while I was finishing homework at the kitchen table, my phone buzzed. It was a WhatsApp message from Henry again. This time, it wasn't a simple plea or guilt-inducing note. It was a photo of the baby, wide-eyed, smiling, holding a tiny stuffed animal, with a caption that read, "Look who's waiting for you. Don't you want to be part of his life?" I felt my chest tighten. The image was innocent, but the intent behind it was not. Henry was using a child to manipulate me. I stared at the screen screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, debating whether to reply. I knew what any response would lead to: more guilt, more attempts to draw me back into chaos. I refused. I blocked the message immediately. Later that evening, Margaret noticed my tension and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You're carrying too much," she said quietly. "It's not your responsibility to make him happy. You're doing the right thing." I nodded, but the frustration and exhaustion inside me had built up over weeks of manipulation and subtle pressure. I felt trapped between wanting to protect myself and wanting to shield Liam from confusion. Liam had been unusually quiet that day. He had seen the photo online and asked questions about the baby. "Why doesn't he want us?" he asked softly, his small face shadowed with confusion. I knelt down beside him. "Some people aren't ready to be parents, Liam," I said gently. "And some people use children to make others feel guilty. We have to stay safe." Liam's brow furrowed, but he seemed to understand, at least for now. The next morning, Henry escalated further. I received a Facebook message from Alex, insisting that the baby deserves to know his brother and hinting that Henry was very upset about my distance. The wording made it clear they were trying to manipulate me emotionally. I blocked Alex again. I realized this wasn't just about reconnecting. It was about control, about using a child to guilt me into compliance. That afternoon, I overheard my aunt on the phone with my grandparents, discussing the situation. "He's a kid, too," she said, her voice sharp with insistence. "He deserves family. You should make him reach out." Margaret's response was measured. "He's 19. He's been through years of neglect and manipulation. We're not going to force him. His well-being matters." I felt a mixture of relief and lingering frustration. Relief that my grandparents were on my side. Frustration that extended family couldn't see the history behind my choice. Then came an unexpected emotional twist. Liam found one of Henry's old voicemails from years ago, when I was younger, and listened to it out loud. "I'm sorry. I'll do better," Henry had said, his voice unsteady. Liam's eyes filled with tears. "Do you think he meant it?" he asked softly. My heart ached. I explained gently that words without actions didn't count, that people could say sorry without ever changing. Liam nodded slowly, his young face reflecting the confusion of trying to understand someone who had hurt both of us. Later that evening, I received another message from Henry. This one was different. It wasn't a photo, and it wasn't pleading. It was a long, rambling text that tried to mix apology with guilt. "I know I've messed up. I know I've hurt you, but you have a chance to be part of our lives. Don't let anger win. Don't make the same mistakes I did. You could have a family here, and you're turning it away." I read it, feeling a wave of anger, sadness, and exhaustion. I wanted to shout, to throw the phone across the room, but I stayed calm. I knew the right response was no response. I blocked him. That night, I lay in bed thinking about everything. The years of broken promises, the chaos, the manipulations, the half-truths, the guilt traps. I realized something important. Staying away wasn't just about protecting myself. It was about protecting Liam, too. It was about creating a safe, predictable, and loving environment, free from the turmoil Henry and Alex brought. I felt a deep sense of resolve. The next day, Margaret sat me down. "You're doing the right thing," she said. "I know it's hard. You'll see your grandparents, Liam, and yourself grow stronger by holding these boundaries." I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that I was not alone, sadness for the family I never had with Henry. Even after all this, the emotional ripple continued. Extended family still occasionally asked why I wasn't reaching out. Social media posts from Henry and Alex popped up, reminding me of the life I had chosen to avoid. But with each message, I felt more clarity. I understood that protecting myself wasn't selfish. It wasn't cruelty. It was necessary. By the end of Update 3, I realized that the struggle wasn't over, and probably never would be completely. Henry and Alex would continue trying to manipulate, and distant family would continue to question my choices. But I was stronger than I had ever been. I had boundaries, clarity, and the love of my grandparents and Liam. I had built a home where safety, care, and trust existed. And even though I sometimes mourned the father I never had, I knew I would never sacrifice my well-being or Liam's for someone who had never shown he could be trusted.
You are definitely not AITA. Your decision to cut contact with Henry is a protective, thoughtful choice built on years of consistent neglect, broken promises, and emotional manipulation. It's not about being cruel or withholding love. It's about recognizing patterns that are unlikely to change and refusing to let yourself ease. Liam be exposed to chaos and instability. Maintaining distance preserves your mental health and provides a safe, stable environment, which is far more meaningful than superficial family bonding that carries real risk. Even though relatives may pressure you or guilt you into reconnecting, they don't live through the repeated disappointments and manipulations you endured, so their expectations aren't fair or informed. Protecting yourself in this context is not only justified, it's necessary. Your boundaries demonstrate emotional maturity, self-respect, and a deep commitment to your sibling's safety. Standing firm in the face of Henry's attempts to guilt or manipulate you is wise and shows that prioritizing your well-being and Liam's stability is the right right choice. The longing for an idealized father is understandable, but your reality is grounded in experience. And choosing safety over fantasy is not only reasonableized the healthiest decision anyone in your situation could make. Before we jump into the next story, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let us know your favorite part in the comments.
Story 2.
AITA for skipping my brother's wedding because of family history. I'm 27 and my brother, Caleb, is getting married tomorrow. I should feel happy. I should be helping with decorations, tasting the cake, and fussing over seating arrangements. But I can't. I'm not excited. I'm anxious, tense, and unsure if I can even be in the same room with certain people. The reason isn't anything small. It's the guest list. My younger brother, Jared, will be at the wedding. Jared is someone who hurt me deeply when I was a child. There's no easy way to explain it. The memories are raw and still feel like open wounds. When I was 13, after an argument that turned into something I couldn't control, I told my mother what had happened. She was shocked, supportive, and immediately cut Jared off from contact with me. She handled it with care, bringing in our sister, Marissa, and our grandparents to discuss what had happened. The conversation was awkward, heavy, and tense. Everyone else seemed unsure how to respond, but my mother was decisive and protective. She made it clear that my feelings mattered more than appearances or convenience. After that, I thought I could start healing. I thought the boundaries we put in place would create some sense of safety, some quiet room to breathe. But my sister, Marissa, became silent about the topic. We never discussed it again. I was nervous about telling her because I knew she had always described her relationship with Jared as the only person who really understood me in our family. My fear was that she might not fully grasp the gravity of what he did or the ongoing discomfort it caused me. That silence was heavy, a constant reminder that some wounds are invisible to others until you force them to look. As the wedding approached, I noticed more hints that the past wasn't entirely behind us. My mother told me she had seen Marissa texting Jared occasionally. At first, I tried to tell myself it was innocent, a sibling wanting to make peace. But the more I observed, the less innocent it felt. I heard that Marissa had driven past his apartment several times, sometimes with Caleb in the car, and other times alone. It wasn't just casual curiosity. It felt like deliberate effort. And yet, when I tried to bring it up with her, she brushed past it or changed the subject. Her eyes would flicker away, her voice would shift, and the topic would vanish like it had never existed. That avoidance made me feel unseen, invalidated, and powerless. The thought of attending the wedding tomorrow fills me with dread. I can see it so clearly in my mind, walking into the venue, hearing laughter and music, catching sight of Jared in the crowd. The forced smiles, the polite conversations, the facade of family unity. I would have to perform along with them, pretending that everything was fine while inside. I'm seething with anger, anxiety, and grief. I've considered leaving a text explaining why I can't come. I picture the words forming on the screen, only to vanish. How do you condense years of pain, neglect, and unspoken trauma into a few sentences? How do you make someone understand why just existing in the same room with a person who hurt you feels unsafe, even when everyone else insists it's family and you should forgive? I've tried, in my mind, to write the perfect message, but nothing feels enough. Part of me feels guilty. Marissa has poured herself into this wedding for months, maybe years. She probably didn't anticipate her choices would clash with my feelings. Other family members have already expressed confusion, suggesting I should just put the past aside or forgive and move on. But it isn't that simple. Forgiveness doesn't erase trauma. Pretending everything is fine would betray the progress I've made in protecting myself. Even preparing for the wedding has been exhausting. Margaret and Daniel, my grandparents, who have always been my anchors, are caught in the middle. They want me to be happy to support my sister, but they also understand why I might struggle to be around Jared. The tension at home has grown over the last week. Every conversation circles back to the same impossible choice: attend and endure, or stay away and feel the weight of judgment. Yesterday, Marissa asked me if I would come help with last-minute decorations. Her voice was soft, almost pleading. I felt my stomach drop. I wanted to tell her why I couldn't, to explain the weight of old wounds and the fear of being near Jared, but the words stuck in my throat. I didn't know how to make her understand without igniting a storm of questions and accusations. I felt cornered, trapped between my love for my sister and my need to survive the day intact. Later, I overheard a conversation between Caleb and my parents while I was in the kitchen. Caleb laughed, unaware of the tension that clung to me like a second skin. He spoke about how great it would be to have the whole family together. He didn't know. He couldn't know. My mother tried to redirect the conversation conversation when my name came up, but I caught fragments. She's just nervous about Jared, and then a pause, as if they were choosing their words carefully. My heart sank. I wasn't just invisible in this conversation. I was being silenced. Right now, I'm leaning towards staying home. I can't risk opening old wounds just to make others feel comfortable. I want to honor my own boundaries, prioritize my emotional well-being, and protect myself from a flood of feelings I'm not ready to face. I know some family members might not understand. I know some will call me selfish or accuse me of overreacting. That's okay. I've learned that protecting myself sometimes requires hard decisions, even when they hurt others in ways I don't intend. Tonight, I sit with the reality that the choice I make will be scrutinized, questioned, and maybe even criticized. But I also sit with the quiet knowledge that I am choosing survival over performance. I am choosing clarity over chaos. And for the first time in a long time, I allow myself a small measure of peace in that decision, even as the day looms ahead. Tomorrow, I may be absent from the wedding, but I am present for myself.
You are AITA. Honestly, attending a wedding while knowing Jared will be there is like showing up to a clown convention when you're deathly afraid of red noses. Sure, everyone else is laughing, but you're busy sweating and calculating escape routes. Protecting your mental health doesn't make you selfish. It makes you a responsible adult with excellent taste in emotional boundaries. Pretending everything's fine would be like starring in a one-person reality show called Smile Until I Cry, and trust me, nobody wants that pilot episode. Staying home might actually be the smartest wedding move you make. You'll dodge trauma, awkward small talk, and probably at least one cake catastrophe. Sometimes the best RSVP is simply me, myself, and my sanity attending solo. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Got a story to share? Drop it in the comments and let us know which one was your favorite. If you enjoyed this video, you'll definitely want to check out TH for Leaving My Dad's House. Click here to watch it now.